Glissen's Culinary Delights. Today we are finishing up our countdown of Thanksgiving dishes that are a must to have at your dinner table. So we've already done our main dish, we've already done our side dishes and appetizers. Now we're going to do one of my favorite parts of Thanksgiving, and that is the desserts. Now most people go the pie route, which is great, and I love pies and I make pies for Thanksgiving as well. But today I'm going to make a very special Thanksgiving dessert that I love to make. It's a little bit more technical than some of the other videos that I made this month, but I promise you it is a great dessert. So today we're going to do a caramel apple cheesecake. And it is delicious. It's got a lovely streusel topping, and so if you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel, definitely do so now. You can check that notification bell and get notifications of our future videos. And if you are just joining us for the first time with this video, go back, because I do have lots of videos on my channel. And if you're trying to get recipes for your full Thanksgiving dinner, the last 2 weeks I've had some really good recipes. Otherwise, you could go back even further and find some of my other recipes as well. So let's get started on our cheesecake. Alright, so like I said, we are doing a caramel apple cheesecake today. So we're going to start with the crust. Now this is kind of a layered cheesecake, so there's multiple things that are required to do this. If you don't want to do all of that, all of the different things, and you can just make up the crust into the cheesecake part and stop there and not do the caramel apple. But I promise you, the caramel apple and the delicious streusel topping is a must. So we're going to have a springform pan. You're going to need one of these, and these are like a must for cheesecake recipes. And so I just sprayed down the inside with some cooking spray so that it doesn't stick on there. And then we're going to make our crust. So here I have flour, and the recipe is going to be down in the description with all the ingredient amounts and stuff. So I've got some flour, I've got some brown sugar, and then I've got 2 sticks of softened butter. I'm going to put in, maybe, there we go. Alright, then I'm going to use a pastry blender, because we're going to kind of crush this up, and we want it to get like a fine, like sand-like consistency. Just make sure it's all stirred. And we're going to put this on the bottom of our cheesecake pan, and then we're going to pop it in the oven for about 15 minutes. Now, depending on the size of your springform that you're using, you're going to have a lot of this dough, and you don't want your crust to be super, super thick. So I like to put it up the sides as well, so that way it is perfect. And it's not like a super thick bottom. Alright, so just press it in to your bottom and your sides. So that's what we're looking at right now. I've got it pressed up on the sides and on the bottom, and I kind of evened it out so that way it's not thicker in certain spots and thinner in others. You want it to just be completely even all across the board. So now I'm going to put this in the oven for, like I said, 15 minutes. And then we're going to remove it, and then we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. And while this is in the oven, we'll get the rest of the stuff prepared. Alright, so we're going on to layer number 2. Our crust is in the oven, so we have our cream cheese in our mixing bowl with our whisk attachment on there. And there's 4 packages of cream cheese. And so I'm going to just mix this to kind of soften it up. Okay. Then I'm going to add in my sugar. Again, ingredients are going to be kind of broken down in the description. You scrape the sides. You can do the sugar, and then your vanilla. 1 teaspoon. Stir that. Now this next step is important for any type of cheesecake you're making, whether you're making a cheesecake that is without any topping on top, or you're making a cheesecake like we're making today that has layers. And it's especially important when you don't have any layer on top, because you don't want your cheesecake to crack. Now if you overbeat your eggs in your cheesecake will crack when you get it out. So that's why we make sure everything is completely mixed, before we add in our eggs, and the eggs go in last. So I'm going to start our mixer, and I'm going to just do 1 egg at a time. And you're just going to stir until you see that all the eggs are incorporated and they're in the mixture. It's looking good. Scrape those sides down, make sure that looks perfect. There's no lumps and it's completely combined. Alright, on to our next layer. Just set this aside and we'll start on our apples. Okay, this next layer is pretty simple. You're just going to get 3 Granny Smith apples, and those are the green apples that you see at the grocery store. And you're just going to cut them into small little chunks because you want them to be able to cook in your pie and be nice and tender. And then I've got a few things I'm going to put in here: some nutmeg, some cinnamon, and some sugar. Stir that up and sprinkle it over your apples. And then just simple, you're just going to stir your apples. Make sure you get some of that mixture on everything. Now the sugars are going to start kind of bringing out some of the juice in those apples once you have it all stirred up. So don't panic if you see when you start to pour your apples onto your cheesecake mixture. If you have some water in the apples, that's totally fine. Alright, so let's go with our last step before we start layering our dish. Now, we've got our apples all cut up and they've got the seasoning on it, the cinnamon and all that good stuff on it. Now I'm going to stick them in a pan and we're going to let them soften for like 3 to 5 minutes just so that they get a little bit tender. That way when we put them and we layer them on top of our cheesecake, they can cook a little more in the oven and then they'll be completely done when your cheesecake is ready. If you skip this step, then you will end up with a cooked cheesecake and your apples will still be a little crispy. So if you like crispy apples, then definitely you can skip this step. If you don't like crispy apples and you want them like kind of a little bit softer, then this is important for your apple cheesecake. So let's get these in the pan. Like I said, we're going to cook these for 3 to 5 minutes just until they're slightly tender. One tip that you can do, just in case you see them getting really dry, just stick a little bit of water in your pan and you're good to go. Alright, so it's been 3 to 5 minutes, so we can check it. It's been actually about 6 minutes, so I think we're good. Perfect. Alright, let's get to layering our cheesecake. Alright, so we're going with our last layer here. So we've got our bowl, we've got some flour, we've got some brown sugar. Sorry, forgot what it was called for a second. Brown sugar, and we've got our pastry cutter. And so I'm just going to mix that just a little bit. And then we're going to add a stick of butter. And we're going to kind of do the same thing that we did with our crust. Only this is not going to be as dough-like because we're just using 1 stick of butter instead of the 2 that we use on the crust. This is going to be more like a sand. So it's been 15 minutes, so I'm going to take out my pie crust, my cheesecake crust. Alright, so let's finish this up so we can start to layer. Okay, once you've got all that butter incorporated, we're going to add some quick oats. Now you're going to want to make sure you use quick oats and not regular oats, because regular oats won't get the same, you won't get the same effect. The oats will still kind of be a little hard and it won't be as good. Alright, so as you can see, it's more crumbly, not as dough-like as our crust was. This is ready to go. Alright, so we are good to go. So we're going to start to layer. Alright, so we're going to start to layer our cheesecake now. If you've got any cracks in your crust that you see that you missed or whatever, now is the time to press them in a little bit. And then we are going to start to layer. So we're going to turn our oven down to 325 because that's how the cheesecake the temp that we're gonna cook the cheesecake at. And then we're gonna add in our cheesecake mixture. That out. And this is, our crust is still warm. So that is totally cool if you have a warm crust. We've got our cheesecake mixture in. Now I'm gonna add our apples in on top. Just have our last layer. We're gonna add our streusel topping above our apples. You're gonna want to completely cover those apples with the topping. Don't push it down, but just lightly cover it. Doesn't that look beautiful? Alright, so there we have it. So we're going to stick this in the oven. Like I said, the oven's set at 325 now, so make sure you lower it after cooking your crust for 15 minutes. But the oven's set at 325. I'm going to add this onto a cookie sheet just in case any of the butter like drips off the bottom. And I'm going to cook it for about 50 minutes to an hour. A general rule of thumb with cheesecakes, if you're cooking a cheesecake that doesn't have anything on top, it's just a plain cheesecake, you can tell when it's ready by the center. You can just shake it a little bit and you're going to have about an inch circle in the center that's going to be like soft and the rest of it's going to be set. But with a cheesecake like this that's covered with stuff, you can actually use a thermometer and stick the thermometer in the middle, and you're going to want your cheesecake to be at 155 in the middle. So that's what we're going to do for this one, just to make sure that it's ready. Like I said, about 50 minutes to an hour, and then we'll come back to it and check on it. Alright, and welcome back. So it has been over an hour now, and my cheesecake finally reached the temp that it needs to be at, which is 150. So I'm going to turn off our oven now. And now, for cooling a cheesecake, it is very important, especially if you don't have topping on top, to cool it down slowly. I've done it before where I've taken it out and been in a rush and putting it underneath a fan or something like that and try to cool it down really fast, and the cheesecake will fall, it will crack, and that is not what you want to do. So we're going to try to cool our cheesecake down really slowly. Even though we do have a topping on top of our cheesecake, we still want to make sure that it's cooled slowly, and then we put it in our fridge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn off our oven. I'm going to open it just slightly, just a little bit, and I'm going to leave it in there for an hour, and I'm not going to touch it. Once that's done and it's been chilling for about an hour, I'm going to take it out, put it on my counter, and let it cool for another 2 to 3 hours until it's completely cool, and then I'll put it in my fridge. So we have our cheesecake out of the fridge. It's been chilling overnight, and it looks delicious. It smells just as good. And so our next step, like I said in the very beginning, this is a caramel apple cheesecake. So of course we've got to put the caramel on. So I like to make my own caramel, and if you want to know how to do it, it's super simple, super easy, and you can head over to my channel, my reels, and see on my Instagram even, any platform that you follow me on. I have my caramel recipe on there, and it's, like I said, it's super easy and it's so delicious. It's way better than just a store-bought caramel, and it just comes out so smooth and delicious. So I just drizzled it onto the top of my cheesecake. But if you don't have time and you've already spent a lot of time doing this cheesecake and you just wanted to get it over quickly, you can always just buy some like ice cream caramel that you get at the store, like this Hershey's caramel. Not as good, I'm telling you, but this is like 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long to do. Whereas this is like, you can buy it at the store. But either way, you can make your caramel, you cannot make your caramel, but you're going to want to drizzle that caramel on top of your cheesecake, because it's a caramel apple cheesecake and it is delicious. So let's give this cheesecake a try. Now I make this every Thanksgiving. It's kind of a tradition of mine. It is so delicious, and so I know what this tastes like, but we are going to give it a taste to make sure that this one turned out good. Yeah, that's some good cheesecake. That came out perfectly. And as you can see in the pictures, the crust isn't super thick. You're going to want to spread the crust up the sides. Otherwise, your crust is going to be way too thick and it's not going to be the right proportions. Our cheesecake is so creamy. Now, here's the tip on that cheesecake. You're going to want to stick that thermometer in there. You're going to want to take it out at 150. Even though you think you pull the thermometer out and it looks a little gooey still, don't leave it in any longer than the 150, because then your cheesecake is not going to be as smooth as this cheesecake turned out to be. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you cook your apples just a tiny bit before you stick them on the cheesecake, because they will be too hard when you pull the cheesecake out. So if you do those things, you leave the oven door open like I told you, and you cool it gently, your cheesecake will not sink and it will be perfectly cooked, just like this one is. So thank you for watching. I hope you guys are having a great Thanksgiving, and you have your Thanksgiving this week. So if you want, go back a few weeks, get some of my recipes to make your Thanksgiving dinner, and I'll be back next week with a video about what to do with your Thanksgiving leftovers. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.